What does it mean to be a woman in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? The media portrays us one way. Social media portrays us in another. Those who leave the church may have a narrative about what is allowed or accepted. But what does it really look like to be a faithful Latter-day Saint woman? On this podcast and in this episode, I want to explore and expand the narrative to show that faithful women lead many different lives and are led by God to do so. My hope is that as you hear each story, each episode, you will gain the courage it takes to follow God's promptings for you, whether He's calling you home or calling you to get a PhD at Harvard. Today, we will hear about the latter. Welcome to Measure of Her Creation. Well, welcome to another episode of Measure of Her Creation. Today we have Kayleigh Ingersoll Omdahl with us, and we have a very cool conversation to have. She has a very interesting and unique experience and background. So welcome, Kayleigh.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about you and where you're at right now, what your journey is.
Living in Boston, been here for the last almost 8 years. And I just finished my PhD this last year at Harvard studying immunology. And I still can't believe that I actually did it and still trying to figure out what to do with it. So I'm just still on the path trying to figure out where to go with it.
Okay, so for those who don't totally know what immunology is, can you give like a definition?
Yeah.
What did you actually study?
Sure, yeah. Immunology is definitely a broad field, right? Just basically, how does your body protect itself from anything foreign? That's kind of what the immune system's role is, but it can cover anything from infectious disease to autoimmunity to cancer. And so you kind of, as a PhD, you pick one very narrow topic. So the lab that I was in studied bone marrow transplants and how to make those safer. There's a disease called graft versus host disease, which is when you do a bone marrow transplant and the immune system attacks the new body. And so what we're trying to do is make it safer for people to get a bone marrow transplant when they're going through when they have a cancer diagnosis. So I studied a very specific cell and specific contexts to understand kind of the process of graft versus host disease at different organ sites where it happens. But it's kind of in the weeds. Yeah.
Wow. So were you just in a lab a lot of the time? Were you in a classroom? How did that actually play out?
So the first few years you take classes, but you rotate with different professors at the beginning to kind of pick a research topic. So I, did a cancer immunology lab, I did an infectious disease lab, and then this is the third lab I did a rotation with to kind of try out the mentorship and just see what the research is like. And then the rest of the time you're just basically full on research every day. I'm with hands in blood and cells and mice and all sorts of things. So it's very hands-on and can be kind of repetitive because you have really specific processes to isolate certain cells to set up these experiments, and 95% of the time they fail. And so it's just trying to tweak little things. What did I change? How did this affect the result? Yeah. So
Wow. So very nuanced, very minute.
yes. Yeah.
What got you interested in immunology in general? That's a very unique journey and path.
Yeah, definitely. I always loved science growing up, and I had always wanted to be an astronaut. That was my goal. So I knew that you had to get a PhD to be an astronaut. So I always just kind of said oh, I'm gonna do research and get a PhD. But I think in high school became most interested in virology and viruses, and I thought pandemics were interesting until I had to live through one. Not as fun, but I had studied different viruses and I did virology research in undergrad. But it turns out I feel like I was more interested in how the body actually responds to those things than studying the bug itself. And so that's what got me sort of into immunology. And so it actually was I'll talk about the internship I did, but I looked at the Harvard virology page and they didn't have an internship, but the Harvard immunology group did. And so I kind of did that, and then I was like, "Oh, I like immunology better. I'll go on that path." But there's obviously a lot of overlap. Yeah.
So interesting. I love that you started out wanting to be an astronaut. I just imagine like a little Kayleigh
Yes,
looking to the stars. That's super cool.
definitely. Yeah,
S-
I had my dad always took me out to, like, look at the International Space Station go over, and I, like, loved all the NASA stuff, and so I
That's
never
really
stopped.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, something that stood out to me when we were first talking was how you just mentioned the wrestle that women have in the church to choose the path that we take in terms of marriage, motherhood, education, career. It's not always straightforward or clear. And sometimes we think it is culturally, but you obviously took a pretty unique path in that. How did you navigate that wrestle in terms of church culture, revelation? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look back now because I think some of those things worked out, but obviously at the time, each it was like each little decision, right? I had to figure out, like, okay, what are my priorities and, like, where is my heart at? Because I felt like sometimes, okay, I'm making this choice to, like, maybe push myself more into a career or, like, a hardcore, like, needing further education, and how does that balance with, like, what I feel like I'm supposed to do, which is, like, be a mother and have children and kind of, like, what aligns with the gospel, and I think, um, it was just helpful to, again, have access to the Spirit, seek personal revelation, like, each of those decisions, and when I felt like, I was right with God and my heart was in the right place and certain things lined up, it like gave me the confidence that, like, I'm not putting off these priorities, or I'm not prioritizing them, but I feel like a desire to do this and a call to do this, and the things lined up to help me do that. And so I just kind of had to lean into the confidence that, like, okay, like, God's making a way. That's the path for me, regardless of what anyone else says or what anyone else does or thinks about my decisions, I guess.
I like that, leaning into the confidence that God has put a calling on your life. Like you can trust that what he's telling you is right, even if it feels a little counter to what people might expect. I think it's interesting having just been studying Adam and Eve, and we obviously study Adam and Eve a lot because of the temple. Um, Eve has such a nuanced choice to make, different than Adam. Adam is kind of like almost pushed into it, and he sees it a little more black and white. But Eve has a lot of nuance in like choosing what the future of man will look like. And I think that choice is still the reality for women today a lot of times. We have to really seek God in the choices that we make. I'm curious, as you've made choices, what were some of the turning points for you in like moments of revelation or moments where you felt like God was pushing you in that direction?
Definitely. I think there's a couple of different ways that I feel like God has spoken to me or kind of like gotten me on this path. I think the first thing is just feeling like the desires that I have, or like, when I'm aligned with the gospel and when I'm, doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I think we are all given unique talents and unique desires and passions, and we can follow them. I think sometimes I would feel like I hear people say, like, "Oh, like, I really wanna do this, but I think God doesn't want me to," or something. But I guess for me, I just felt like sometimes, like, I think if you really want to, I think if it feels good and feels right and you're seeking the Spirit, like, I think that that's what I was supposed to do, right? And so I think it oftentimes wasn't just like a big aha as much as it was just following kind of what I felt like at the time and then seeing where it led. So I think even just from, like, serving a mission, like, I never had a "Well, you need to serve a mission or you don't need to serve a mission" feeling. Like, if you have desires to serve God, you're called to the work, and I just felt like I always wanted to, so I did, and it was right for me. And but it wasn't like one moment or one little thing. And so I think, additionally, I had, like, moments across my journey where just things lined up that I felt like shouldn't have, or, I felt like real miracles occurred that kinda just kept me going. And so when I was in some of the depths of despair, like, should I have really done this? This is really hard. I don't know what I'm doing. I had to like look back at those moments and like hold on to that. Like, okay, God showed me that this was the right thing. Kind of have to hold on to that until I get to the next
The
sign
next
that
yes.
like, oh, this might actually work out.
Can you take us to a couple of those moments? What were those turning points or moments where you were like, "Can I really do this?" And
Yes.
God gave you a
There were
little push
many. Yeah,
forward?
for sure. So at BYU, I had like every summer I went home to work to make enough money for the next school year. And so I realized like, oh my gosh, if I want to go to grad school, I need a really good research internship this last summer before I go to grad school the next year. I won't get in. So I applied to be a Simmons Center for Cancer Research Fellow, which is they have a lot of graduate fellows and they do give a few undergrad ones. So I had to write like a grant of what I would do and whatnot. So, anyways, I did all that for BYU. I got it. It was like good pay for the summer. I had like housing and everything lined up in Provo. Um, and then a friend of mine, he was like, he told me that, oh, I have this internship at Harvard lined up. And I was kind of just like, oh, he's just so full of himself, probably. But it did kind of like, I was kind of just like, who do you think you are? Like, what confidence do you, like, how did you get that confidence to think, like, oh, I could go do this at Harvard? Like, anyway, so I thought maybe I'll Google and kind of look up like, oh, what would it take? Because I didn't know where to even apply for grad school. I just knew I wanted to do it. So again, I looked at the Harvard like virology website because I was studying viruses at the time, and I thought like, okay, this is kind of what I needed to get into their program maybe. And then they had a link to the Harvard immunology site, which is kind of related. And they said like it said summer internship, like deadline for this internship in 2 days. And so I was like, no, I shouldn't. I already have an internship lined up this summer. But then it just kind of was like, why not? Like, why not throw my hat in the ring and see if I got it? So I put in for it. First off, I got the internship, which I think in itself was a miracle. But it really was financially a strain because they weren't paying me very much money. I have to move to Boston. I lose the fellowship and the housing in Provo. Like, I'll lose money in that way too. And I'm not going to have enough money to make it through the next school year. But I had good mentors at the time that were like, they told me like, this will open up more doors in the future. Like, you can't turn this down. So, anyways, I ended up going. I had like a really great experience. I connected with the right people. And by the end of the summer, I just out of the blue, I got an email from the Simmons Center of Cancer Research, like, oh, hey, like, we're sorry you weren't able to be a fellow this summer. Like, just let us know some of your expenses and maybe we can help out. So I thought, like, oh, cool. Maybe they'll give me like a little bit of something. I don't know. And so I told them like a few of my expenses, just like housing and things. Anyways, they ended up like sending me a check in the mail that was more than they had even offered me to stay and do the internship at Provo. And so, like, not
Wow.
only did I get the Harvard experience, I got the funding I needed for the whole, like, next year of school. I was able to pay for the GRE and for, like, all the grad school application fees, which I didn't know how I was gonna do that. And so just, like, getting that check, like, not only was it such a financial blessing, but it was also just like, this is a sign that, like, I was doing the right thing or this was helpful, and so I didn't find out, like, why that even happened because it really was so out of the blue. I hadn't heard from them in
Yeah.
4 or 5 months until I got back to BYU. But there was this awesome guy who worked at LDS Philanthropies that he was like, "Oh, I was just in like this women in science meeting and your name came up." And then like the next meeting I went to was like the Simmons Center meeting. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it was such a bummer. We couldn't fund her, summer thing." And he's like, "Well, why don't we just fund her research there? Like, this will look good for us. Why not do this?" And so,
Wow.
anyways, and he just had that prompting, and so it was just, like, such a blessing for me and just kind of let me know I was on the right path, and also helped because they now fund students every year to go do research at, like, Harvard and Stanford and other places because without those experiences, it's really hard to get into the med schools or to get into these research programs. So, like, it also helps BYU students anyway, so it was kind of like yeah, it
You
worked
were
out
like
for
a
me, it worked out for other
pioneer.
people. Yeah, but only because other people, followed those promptings too. So I think like that was one of those things I like held on to was like, okay, like this is right, right? Like this is um obviously I would have never even got my application looked at Harvard later to go to grad school without that experience, but I met people there that made the right connections and everything. And then throughout grad school, which was 7 years and really long and really hard, a couple of
That
times
is
like I
so
made this
long.
it's so long. So a couple of times I visited that same guy and his wife anyways, who helped me get that funding, and it was, like, such a blessing to, like, go back to them because they believed in me so much, like, and I did not believe in myself, so it was, like, so helpful to talk to them when they're like, "You're doing great, like, we wanna support you. This is how they were so positive about it, so I think, like, even when I'm down in the depths of despair, kind of wondering, like, "Why did I do this? How am I gonna finish this?" It was helpful to go back to that, and that was, like, a big one of those big, moments that kinda changed my path. Yeah.
Yeah, such a vote of confidence from God that it wasn't
Yes.
just promptings to you, but promptings to someone else to make your path open and smooth.
Exactly.
Smooth-ish.
Yes. Ish, yeah. Exactly. Totally.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you feel I'm curious in being a woman in science, what has that experience been, especially as a Latter-day Saint and then going to Harvard? I'm sure you weren't surrounded by lots of other Latter-day Saint women in the sciences. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I think it's been I mean, it's I've I've really enjoyed it, and I think it helps that I kind of, like, had a strong testimony and, like, made it a real priority to kind of keep my involvement in the church and kind of just, like, keep to my standards no matter what. But, yeah, I think I was like a little bit of anomaly or people kind of, don't really know why. I feel like I think I worry that people think I'm crazy or like, why would you do this? Or maybe I'm not as smart, like not as enlightened because you know, have these beliefs. But it was also unique to be able to like, I did end up connecting with other grad students that maybe weren't as vocal about their beliefs, but still like had strong beliefs. And I think it was a good opportunity to be a good example with people, like, I went to the bar and I went to talk to everybody and I hung out at these things and I wasn't drinking, but I still wanted to engage and be really good friends and care about people and make really good connections, and let that be their experience of someone that is a member of the church rather than someone that also just, like, doesn't engage or just, like, I'm trying to keep myself, free of these things. So I felt like I really tried to engage and really enjoy those relationships with people that aren't members of the church because they had so much to offer too, and um, I made some great friendships.
Did studying science ever make you question your faith, or did it strengthen your faith?
I think for me, it's strengthened my faith, and I know like for a lot of people, obviously that's not the case. I think people see a lot of tension with science and religion. I don't. I think one of my spiritual gifts, I'm sure, is like a believing heart. I think I've just like had a strong belief in the church and have a strong testimony. And so everything I learn about science, it's like it's an opportunity to kind of really engage with it and like how does this align with my beliefs and how does this increase my testimony in God? And I think it's really beautiful to see how the world works, how the human body works. All of these things are just like masterful creations. Like with all our best technology, with all our best studying, we still are trying to figure it out. There's just so much depth to it, and I think it's beautiful and it's fascinating. So I've always, I guess, I've loved science. I love those things. So I think to other people, maybe it seems a little bit odd, but I've really loved it.
So you are married and you have 2 kids, right? So, like,
Yes.
along this whole journey, you've also been starting and building your family.
Yeah.
How has that worked? How has that
It's been a
dynamic
journey.
been with your
Yeah.
husband and kids? Yeah, tell us a little bit about, like, how you met and how that
Yeah.
was navigated between the 2 of you.
Yeah, it's been full of, some struggles, but also miracles. Like, I looking back now, I'm just like, I showed up in Boston by myself with a couple suitcases, right? And 7 years is a long time, so I've had a lot of time to work on those things, but, um, yeah, so my husband I've known since BYU. We were really good friends, and he was the one that had the internship at Harvard, so, um, I kind of followed him on his internship that summer, and he still wasn't quite interested in dating me. But
That's bold.
yeah, I know. Well, I was saying like I'm not following you, but it did inspire me to look into that. And I think from the beginning, I think it's been a great thing because he's inspired me to like look beyond myself and have more confidence because he is really confident and So, and we've been really good friends despite the romantic ups and downs that we had. So, um, but anyways, yeah, so we had not dated at BYU, been on a couple of dates here and there. And then it wasn't till we had moved to I went to Boston and he went to Johns Hopkins, which is in Baltimore, that he said like, "Oh, I'm actually thinking about you, or I'm interested in dating now," which I was kind of like, now that we like live so far apart. But I do think
Convenient.
it's so convenient, right? But looking back, of course, I think it was such a blessing because I was able to make the decision for grad school like just about me. Like I got to interview wherever I wanted. I got to pick the program I wanted. It wasn't like the two body problem. So in a way that was a real blessing where I did get to like do exactly what I wanted. I also did the Jerusalem Center like the semester before I went to grad school. And if I was married, I
So
wouldn't have
cool.
gotten to do that, right? Like I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So, like in the end, I'm grateful that we had not dated earlier and it took a little bit longer because I got to do really cool things that I think was part of my plan. So yeah, so we ended up dating long distance for 2 years, and we did once we decided we wanted to get married, we're looking at it like we have maybe 5 more years in these programs in different cities. What are we gonna do? We talked to our program directors, we looked into like what it would take to transfer. They don't do that for grad school. Like your funding's all tied up, your projects are all tied up. There was time I was biking around Boston just like, is this the last time I'm here? Like I'm so sad. Do I need do I need to prioritize marriage? Is this me being selfish and like I need to give this up in order to prioritize marriage and family? So we really were like praying and just kind of going on faith, and our parents are just like, it'll work out, don't worry. And like we're the ones like, well, we have to work this out. Like we have to figure this out. So in the end, yeah, we got engaged in February of 2020 in New York City. And we were riding the subway and we'd heard about like we're scientists, we'd heard about COVID in China. So I was like, the moment it hits the subway, like it's all over. And like 2 weeks later, that happened. It really, I mean, our parents kind of were like, "You called the plague down on us," because it was such an answer to our prayers. But it really did solve that problem. But looking back, I mean, there was no way that this was going to work out for us. But my husband's research was all computational, and so he could do it remotely, and mine was all in person. Like, there's
In
nothing I
lab.
could do. Yes, in a lab, I have to be there with all of the, everything. So we got married that summer. He moved to Boston, and he was remote for the rest of his grad school program, which he could do, but it wasn't easy. And I mean, I'm so grateful. I mean, it shows how much he loves me, but like he sacrificed everything. He sacrificed his in-person things, his community, his mentorship that he would have gotten more of, all of those things to be here for me to finish this. And so I'm just so grateful he was so supportive, and it was just kind of baked into the relationship because that's what we were already doing, but it was really a lot of his sacrifice that made this possible. And I'm really grateful for even when we again, like, deciding to have a family in grad school, like, that's not necessarily easy but we just did it, and he had to travel to Baltimore, like, for a week at a time, usually every month or every other month. So he would go down for a week, so then I'd be alone with the toddler, and anyways, it was or with the baby for a while, so I mean, it was hard, but I think we just, like, knew what we were doing was right, and we had a lot of help. Families, friends, our ward family, there's just we had a lot of support, which was great. So
I just hear so much faith and courage in this experience, in this story. Like, nothing was straightforward. Nothing was easy about doing grad school and having a family and, like a 7-year program. Also, I was just thinking about leaving BYU, being single can be scary for people too, and having the courage to move across the country to pursue grad school also took a lot of courage. That's a lot of like unknown when you're so young, you know.
yeah, yeah.
And so what advice would you give someone else who might be an undergrad in a position where they're about to graduate or they're at this crossroads? How do you tune into that courage and that faith when it feels really scary?
Yeah, I think when I was leaving BYU single, I'm just like, "Oh, am I missing my chance to even get married?" Right? I was worried about that, I guess. Um, but I think I don't know, just I think doing hard things enables you to do more hard things in a way. Like, I felt like my mission was really difficult. It's like very foreign and very like hard in certain ways. And so like, I don't know,
Where'd you
that gave me
serve?
s I served in Indonesia. And so in that way, it kind of gave me the confidence to like, well, I'm, like, still in the same country, I speak the language, and I have, like, a GPS. Like, I would definitely be able to figure out uh, any new city or whatever wherever I moved, right? Like, I get it's not gonna be that hard, right? And I think the church is such a great community where I'm like, I had that wherever I moved. Most grad students came and they knew no one, right? Like, I had people checking in on me, and I could go to a community, and if I needed help with something, I could find people. I found roommates that way, I found friends that way, and support that way. So I think just having the courage to do it and not, I guess, just not, yeah, you have to kind of hush the fears, I guess, or decide not to be afraid of. There's certain things and certain unknowns. And I think it is like, it's a hump to get over because when you first move or whenever you change, or it just always stinks to be the new person or start something new, I think. And so it can be a lot to kind of take on. But I feel like once I've done it a couple of times, I'm less scared to do it again because I know that in the end it'll work out, right? Like you build up friends, it takes time, you figure out the city, you do this stuff. And it had helped that I'd done that summer internship in Boston before. Like I met the ward and I knew the areas and I really liked it. And so that helped a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, you had already kind of built a path for yourself. And I think that's
Right.
so true. That is how God works. Like it's line upon line. He'll
Right.
drop us into a scary situation, but he prepares us along the way and he helps us. And then the next time we have a little bit more trust that, okay, this is scary, but he's come through
Right.
for me before and he'll come through for me again.
Right. And that was the same with like deciding to have a kid in grad school. In some ways, it was actually really good because it's, like, very flexible. All my work was my own. I had an amazing boss who was very supportive of that. I had talked to her about it, but then, like, I had to, like, drop my daughter off at daycare, and I felt so bad about that. And so that fear and just like, am I a bad mom? Is this the right thing? And like, okay, I'm crying every day. Like, well, maybe this is a sign that this is right. But in other ways, it was like, I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. In the long run, this won't really matter. It's had to be those things. As like, I had to kind of overcome that fear. And then, of course, after you get over that hump, like her teachers were amazing. They were really supportive. They loved our family, all this stuff. And so now it's funny coming around on the other side of like it was hard to come to Boston and make a community, do all this stuff. And now that we're thinking about moving, like I cry thinking about it. Or even her last day of daycare, like, I cried almost more than when I dropped her off the first time. And even, like, this morning, she pulled out this card that her daycare teachers and all her friends had made her when she left, and, "We love you,
Oh,
Miriam. You're such a light. You're this and this." All the stuff that they had written was so beautiful and so sweet. And so in a way, it was just like I added more people that, like, loved my daughter, and it was such a blessing in a way. So I think, yeah, deciding on something and, like, just, like, feeling it's right, making your best choice, and then, like, trusting that it will work itself out even when it's hard to do initially.
I mean, I think it's such an interesting thing to differentiate. Like sometimes a path feels so smooth and made for you. Like you're talking about this funding coming through and the
Yeah.
internship just falling into place. Like it was almost an easy way forward. And then fast forward to you dropping your daughter off at daycare and it's like, am I doing the right thing? Like this feels so hard. There's more
Right.
barriers than like ease. And that's where I
Yeah.
think doubt can come in. Like, I think I felt this with this very podcast. Like, when it
Yeah.
gets hard, I'm like, wait, should I just quit? Like, what is this? This
Is
is
this a
hard,
sign
you
is this
know?
a sign that I shouldn't be on this path?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, is this God telling me that we're done here? Or is this
Right.
just like the natural way that when he asks me to do something, it will require a lot of me? And that's the point.
Right, exactly. Or, like, I'm crying in my boss's office and, like, 2, 3, 4 years where, like, my data is negative, my experiments aren't working, this is failing, I don't know how. I don't think I ever thought I would actually finish the PhD even, like, 3 weeks before I finished it. Like, I never, like, actually I still can't believe that I did it because I'm just like, these things just did not work out for so long, and there's just so much failure that I'm just like, "Is this, like, what is this even worth? What am I even doing? And I think that's what's funny too, maybe coming back to the point about, like, science and faith, I'm like, actually that I when I was doing the science myself, I almost trusted all science less. Like, there's just so many variables. There's so many things that, like, I had this amazing result where the treatment group, like, actually gave me the result that I wanted, and I was like, "This is great," and I repeated it, and it worked great. And then I tried to repeat that experiment for the next year, and none of those results worked. So, like, could I have stopped and published, like, a little paper and just, like, said, "These are the results, and this is what's right." Maybe, but is that ethical? Is that really good, rigorous science? No, and of course, I didn't do that, but I think, just, like, for how much we do know about science, we also don't know a lot, and it's still subject to, like, a lot of our mistakes and our experimental setups, and how much do they really translate into the real world. So, I think the funny thing now is I'm like, do I trust science less that I've studied it? Kind of, in a way. I'm more skeptical of it, but, uh yeah, there's just I mean, it's just a hard I feel like it's a hard thing to do. And not to compare, like, a science PhD versus other things, but it's like, sometimes I was like, it'd be easier if I just, like, sent out a survey or, like, you have results anyway and you could, like, publish those. But I feel like these, like, really hard science ones, I'm like, I'm trying to discover, like, an actual truth, and, like, I can make a guess based on the best data and the best information I have, and it could still be wrong. And even when I discover that this is wrong, it's hard to publish. Like, you can't really publish that. Like, so anyways, it can be a difficult thing where it's like I'm trying to, like, make new knowledge, and sometimes it's just wrong and there's nothing there and you have to try something else. And so yeah, that was really difficult.
I think that's actually a super interesting metaphor to how we work with God too, because I think we can do things one way or like seek revelation one way, and it can work that time. And it feels like, oh, yeah, that God speaks to me through journaling or through scripture study. And then the next time we come around to a big decision, it can feel like, oh, my experiment failed, or
Right.
it's not as straightforward.
It's not as straightforward
Or
as what you did in the past doesn't work now.
yes, yes, and or like I'm a human in this variable, and so I can't like perfectly repeat what I've done in the past, or I have weaknesses or imperfections or struggles now that I didn't before, or strengths that I have now that I didn't before. And I
Right.
think that is just such an interesting comparison because God has made ample provision for our imperfection, even in hearing his revelation. Like, even if some point along the way he was trying to say, like, maybe you should quit. Like, he probably wasn't, but if he did and you didn't quit, he has made ample provision for how he could bless you through your own choices. And so I think almost there's not always this like set forth path that he's expecting you to go on. It's like you make your best choices through your desire through the Spirit, and then he consecrates wherever you go and consecrates that for your closeness to him, for your growth, for your learning.
Definitely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think it's like, this is the path God has set, and I'm just trying to find the revelation and get myself on that. And if I don't, so I don't think it's that way at all. I think as we're going, He consecrates that path forward, and it is the best path because that's where you're at. That's where you're at, right? It's because if you're seeking the Spirit and you made those decisions, it's the best way because that's the reality you're living in, right? It's like that's what you're doing. So I think as you continue to seek help and revelation through those things, which it comes back to why I think, like, our desires are so important, and I think agency is just such a gift. And so, like Eve, like, I think it's just such a it can be so scary to, like, have all these doors open or have these different paths presented, but I think what a gift and a blessing it is to learn how to do that and to hopefully eventually learn how to make those decisions on our own in line with the Spirit and decide for ourselves. That's what we came here to do. And so we're still figuring it out, of course.
I know. I think it's just comforting that if we make a wrong choice, quote unquote, that
Right. There
God
isn't
God knows what to do with
yeah,
us.
right,
Still,
exactly.
we haven't
Exactly.
like botched
He'll
the
still
whole
make a
plan.
way. You never ruin the plan. We have Jesus Christ. It's never ruined. It's all right. Yeah. Never ruined.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious, like before we started this, you talked about your love for Relief Society and your love for women in the church. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? Like how you have grown to love and respect a variety of people within the church?
Yeah, I don't know what I mean, I've just always loved and connected with the women of the church. I think ever since college and onwards, I've I love Relief Society, and I think it's been a little crazy because I think probably of the, like, 10, 11-ish years I've been in Relief Society, I think almost 7 of those years I've been a Relief Society president. So, like, in different
Oh,
wards,
wow.
though, doing different things, and so, especially getting to grad school, I was kind of, like, overwhelmed, like, I'm already doing this hard thing, like, "Oh, on top of that, do this," but I just can't say enough about how much of a blessing it's been for me to just have have a reason to connect with all of these different sisters. It also just opens the door for so many different there's just so many different types of women all over the world doing different things. I think sometimes we put people in like a box when it's like, "Oh, are you working or staying at home? Or are you doing this or are you doing this?" Right? Like I think there's so many people pursuing different paths from different cultural backgrounds, from different areas, and everyone has something to offer. And so as I've gotten to know different women, especially through Relief Society, I think I'm just amazed at things that they've been through, their testimonies. Like I've learned so many lessons from them. They've served me in so many different ways. And so I just love to learn about women, empower women within the gospel. I think oftentimes I just don't want women to ever feel undervalued because maybe there have been times I've felt that, and I just have such a testimony that, God loves and supports women. The church does too, and maybe that's not always so apparent to everyone, but I think the doctrine just really speaks to that. And I have such a testimony of that that I love with Relief Society. We get to that's our space and we get to really lead and teach and serve and use the priesthood and seek revelation. And so I love that that's a place where we can hopefully do that in a kind way and with supporting others' decisions, even when they're different from decisions we make ourselves. Or um, so anyways, I could go on and on about how much I love women and support them, but I think it's been part of my studies, and as I've gone to really good institute classes here, and served women, I've studied the Abrahamic covenant and how it applies to women, how it's important in our lives, how the roles of daughterhood and sisterhood and motherhood and wifehood are these really divine roles, all within the covenant and all connected to Jesus Christ. And so I just anyways, I could go on and on.
Well, it's just interesting to look at how the world is portraying Latter-day Saint women right now, and even just portraying motherhood or wifehood or daughterhood, like, all of those roles in general are kind of on the line, I would say, and so it's cool to lean into gospel truth and differentiate gospel truth from culture sometimes to really see the power of God in us, especially when we lean into that connection and revelation with God as we make decisions. What I'm curious if if you were a Relief Society president for all the women listening right now, what would you hope they knew about themselves?
I think that they are loved and that they have such power to do such good in the world. I feel like at this time, women's innate powers and innate good, our power to love, our power to nurture is kind of maybe being taken advantage of or you know, kind of being hijacked in a way to say, if you loved so much, why would you be part of this organization? Or if you had certain things are just, I think it makes me sad that I feel like women are being driven out of the church in a way. Um, because I think we need that love and that deep love and that nurturing and and different opinions and different values, still within our Relief Society. I think women often feel alone. And if I was a Relief Society president, I would just want to build community. I think even when we speak different languages, even when we have different backgrounds. It's been such an amazing opportunity to be a Relief Society president in the ward I'm in right now, just because we span all different ages, we span all different nationalities, and some of the women that I've needed the most have been someone I would have never connected with. And if I would have just come to grad school and stayed in the ivory tower like community, right? If I would have just like only associated with academics, I would have never had this experience that I've had and had these people to love and support me even through like challenges and difficult times. And so I just think like finding community, and even when it doesn't feel like there is one, and I know lots of women feel disconnected from their Relief Society, it's like just trying to find a way to connect and to build that community and not only connect and see themselves not as just like this is not just a class on Sunday. Like this is a
Mm,
priesthood organization, and
yes.
it's a worldwide organization. And so I'm connected to you. You are connected to me. We are part of the Relief Society. We are a sisterhood, and there is power in that. And I just have such a testimony of it being like divinely organized and really worldwide. And I think I've been prone to, and I'm sure people are like wanting recognition, wanting people to see you, and I think that's sometimes like one of the struggles with women in the church, right? It's like we're not maybe our roles aren't as on display, but I just think sometimes like maybe it's just not going to be that way. A lot of women's work is quiet work or unseen work, but it doesn't mean it's less valued in any way. And sometimes it's even more important. Like I was at Christmas and there was this family party and things going on, and my daughter, my new baby, is having a hard time. Like I'm in the other room or I have to go away to nurse her. And like I'm not going to be seen and no one's going to see this work. No one sees the quiet work of motherhood. It oftentimes has to be away because the child needs that attention and they need that space, and it's no less valuable than what's seen by other people. So I think, and not to say that's only motherhood, right? But lots of the things women do, maybe it's not as recognized, maybe it's not as seen, but it's so valuable. And I think that we really uphold society and do the work of creating community and serving others and making sure needs are met and like emotional needs and physical needs. So that was way
Yeah,
too long. I
even
could keep going.
no, I love the passion about it, and I love even just leaning into the name of the Relief Society. Like, we just it
Right.
rolls off the tongue so readily, but if we think about those words, those are so powerful. Like, we are a
Yes.
society for the purpose of relieving others,
Right.
relieving our community, being a space of relief. Like, that is so
Right.
cool.
So
We need
cool.
to lean into that more. I love that.
Yes. And not to make ourselves guilty if we can't do like, the big things, but like I think with ministering too, it's like that's our role in Relief Society is to minister to each other. And we can't solve each other's problems. I can't help this person. They have cancer or they can't make it to church for these reasons or whatever. I can't solve anyone's problems, but kind of just bringing relief in suffering, whether that's through just listening, supporting, praying for, reaching out to. I mean, that's all we can hope for, right? In some of those things, like no one can fix these problems, but what we can do is provide relief and support through all of the ups and downs of life.
Well, I would love to hear through your whole journey with science, with grad school, with marriage, motherhood, Relief Society. What have you learned about Christ through your journey, his character?
Through all this, I think he's just more merciful and more loving, more long suffering than we could even imagine. I think, I guess I've struggled through a lot of these things with maybe like imposter syndrome, especially at grad school, right? Like, I'm going to Harvard, I'm doing this really hard thing. People expect a lot from me. And I can't even tell you how many times I heard, you should know this, like in my classes and my things over and over again. Like, oh, you should
That's a
know this.
terrible
You should
thing.
know this. It's terrible. And I didn't realize getting into it. Like, that's the problem with the PhD. But like, with research, there's just like it's an infinite amount of knowledge you're expected to know. Like you'll never know enough. So I think I guess kind of bring that to the church. Like I won't ever be good enough or like know enough. And so instead of just beating myself up over it, in a way, you almost just have to surrender. And like, I think I did that in school. Like, you're right, I don't know this, but show me more, like, okay, but I can learn something, right? And so I think with Christ, it's like, instead of like trying to work hard enough myself to be enough, in a way, it's just better to surrender and just accept that Christ is everything and enough. And I think the other thing is like battling that the internal thoughts of, I feel like I used to always just feel so guilty, like I never, I can't, I messed up again. I can't do this. This is not enough. Like, oh, you're so dumb. You could have these internal thoughts, and like recognizing that, like, that's not from God. That's not from the Spirit. That really is just me being disappointed with myself. And so instead of doing that, like, oh, I should be a better minister. Oh, I should do this and this. Like, I think when we beat ourselves up, we just hold ourselves back. And I didn't understand the character of God in the right way. I didn't understand the character of Christ in the right way. Like, he's so forgiving.
Yeah, we think that the critic in our head is
The critic in
is
your head is
God.
not God talking to you. I think it's like you have to get to, like, I think, like, he's already moved on. He's already forgot, like, he's already just right? Like, I'm stuck I ruminate over things, and I'm stuck on this thing, and I think he's already just like, if you just let it go, right? Like, I've already paid for that sin. I've already done this thing. Like, I just want you to improve and get better, right? So I think as I've gotten to know Christ better through these, like, basically feeling so inadequate that you have to just like give that up and think, like, I have to rely on Christ in all of these aspects. I've gotten to know his character better, that he's just more merciful, more patient than I could imagine, and to just kind of hold on to that. And so to let more of that love in versus that like critiquing in, or expecting that God is like so disappointed in me in some ways. Like, I think obviously parenthood helps you with that too, helps you to understand that. Like, oh, this is how God feels about me. This is how God feels about the person I meet on the street, right? And like, obviously has very low expectations in some ways, right? We just have to, as parents, you have to for your children, and love that overcomes any of um the shortcomings and downfalls. I think one thing that I love, I had an experience with my boss, was just incredible that I worked for. She's such a wonderful lady. And so I did have this experience where it was in my third or fourth year. I went into her office crying, just like, my data's going nowhere. Like, I'm so worried. This is never going to work out. And she's just like, oh, Kayleigh, like, I'm your Jewish mom. Like, even when you don't think I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about you. And so it just taught me so much about not only my own parents, not only, but like about Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother. Like, even when we don't even think they're thinking about us, they're thinking about us and they're worried about us. And so like, she had been dedicating her Sunday afternoons to think about my project, even though I felt so alone, like, oh, like, this is never working out. She has no confidence in me. This is never going to work out. And so I think, like, learning about the character of God, like, he never is he's even when we forget about him, he's not forgetting about us. He's constantly thinking of us. And even when we're not even considering that.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful testimony, and I think really cool to hear when you have accomplished so much. Like, who goes to Harvard and does a PhD? Like, on the outside, that's very intimidating to hear from someone, but to admit, like, you've been feeling these inadequacies all along the way, and that
It's intimidating to
inadequacy.
hear about myself. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like sometimes people like have really high expectations,
Mhm.
and I don't fulfill, or it's like, do I fulfill this, or am I worthy of it, or do I? Yeah,
But yeah, leaning into his love through those
yeah,
inadequacies, that's so beautiful. Because I think no matter how we present on the outside, like, oh, I have a master's in such and such, or I've done all of
yeah,
these cool things, we all have insecurities. And
right,
bringing Christ into those insecurities, I think, is what helps us push through to do those amazing things. His strength, his confidence, like you talked about, is what gets us to do those things, even though we ourselves alone, like, maybe couldn't have done it.
right. Could never have done it. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you, Kayleigh, for coming on the show. It was so good to hear your testimony. It's inspired me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love to listen to the podcast, so just happy to be here.
Thanks. Thank you for listening. Send this episode to a friend who could use this message. Every share, every follow, every like helps this podcast get to more listeners. All my love till next time.